Hi, everyone. I'm Rob Menser. I'm a reporter with Wisconsin Public Radio. And today I'm here to introduce you to an exciting local journalism collaboration that has just launched here in Wisconsin. The new News Lab, the Northeast Wisconsin News Lab, is bringing more in-depth news to Green Bay and the Fox Valley. And it's a pretty exciting collaboration that is meeting a real need. We all know that the news industry faces serious challenges. There's disinformation on social media. There's digital advertising that has eaten up revenue from local sources. And the business model for journalism looks nothing like it did 2 decades ago. Nationally, the number of people working in newsrooms has fallen by half. And in the last 15 years, more than 2,000 newsrooms have closed. My employer, WPR, is one of the partners in this collaboration. And the idea behind the new News Lab is to help build up not just one outlet, but the entire local news ecosystem in this region. So there are a number of partners here. The newspapers involved are the Green Bay Press Gazette, the Appleton Post-Crescent, and the Press Times. There's also Wisconsin Watch, the investigative journalism organization, and the news website Fox Valley 365, which covers communities of color. The University of Wisconsin Green Bay is an educational partner. We're going to talk with our media partners in the second half of our program, but we want to start off by talking a bit about how this collaboration came to be and what some of the ideas and the goals behind it are. So the initial funding for this came from Microsoft, which is providing financial support through local community foundations. And we're joined today by Eric Prock of Microsoft, Kurt Dachin of the Community Foundation for the Fox Valley region, and Amber Pollock of the Greater Green Bay Community Foundation. So thanks to you all for being here. And I'd like to start with you, Eric. You are spearheading this initiative for Microsoft. Why? How did Microsoft get involved in this collaboration? What is it? What are its goals?
Absolutely. Thanks, Rob. So Microsoft shares some of the same concerns in regards to the declines in reporters' capacity in newsrooms and really the broad crisis that's facing journalism. Microsoft has a long history in journalism, going back more than 25 years, particularly the news business with MSN. We began our relationships with news publishers and saw very quickly the importance of delivering high quality, trusted news to our audiences from as many voices as possible. However, over the years, we've noticed that in our relationships with our news publishers, that the economic situation and other factors in the marketplace have really put them under stress. And we saw them either have to reduce their staff or capacity, or even at times have to close. And we began to become concerned that we wouldn't be able to deliver the type of experience that our users demanded in regards to news on our platform. Over the years, we built one of the largest distribution platforms for news. We reach about 180 countries in about 32 languages and about 500 million news readers every month. And so they come to us and trust us to provide them with the quality news and journalism that they are searching for. And Microsoft does not have reporters and editors, and we don't create news. We rely on our partners and we distribute their content. We have about 1,200 news publishing partners worldwide. They represent about 4,500 media brands. And we have contracts with each one of them to monetize their content and share that revenue back to them. That revenue has exceeded over $1 billion over the last 5 years. However, the scope of the problem and the crisis that's facing journalism means that revenue is nice and it's helpful, but it is not stopping the downward trend. And so we began to think about what more could Microsoft do to address this issue, because without our publishers and without our partners, we could not deliver the product that we wanted to. And we found a partner internally with Brad Smith and his corporate external legal affairs team, as they were looking at the same issues simultaneously, but more from a democracy and civil discourse standpoint, and what happens to our communities when we see local news fall away in terms of our democracy. Those two things are directly connected to one another. And so we got together to work on this initiative to see what we could do from a business standpoint and also a corporate and social responsibility standpoint to help address this. The initiative itself has three pillars. One is to address the issue of the business model, as you mentioned, being impacted by technology and platforms that also share news. One is on trust and integrity, and how do we maintain trust in the news, as that's been a very important topic of late. And then finally is the security and safety and legal security of journalists. Those are areas that we think we can have the most impact. We don't have all the answers, and our effort is very modest to begin with, but we're trying to learn by partnering directly with communities on the ground and community foundations to see what we can do and what others can do to help address this crisis. And one of those things is the local news pilot that you mentioned. We have done this pilot in 5 markets, with Green Bay and the Fox Valley being the last of the 5 markets to come online. And we're very excited about what we've learned so far in such a short amount of time. It's tremendously important to partner with the community foundations as our connection into the community, and really a place where we can build the financial support that the newsrooms and the ecosystem, Rob, that you mentioned, can then benefit from. In addition to financial support, we bring in other resources such as the legal support we talked about, capacity building, technology, service, and tools, and training and education that we and our partners can bring. And we hope that we find different interventions that can be successful at rebuilding these ecosystems long term, because they're important to us, they're important to the communities, and they're important to the country.
Thank you so much. So we are also joined by Joaquin Alvarado, who runs the Seattle Times Investigative Journalism Fund and is advising this collaboration and 4 others around the country. So Joaquin, tell us a bit about how these collaborations work and what some of the stories that have come out of the other projects that you're working with.
Sure. And just one clarification at the top. I helped to create the Investigative Journalism Fund at the Seattle Times, but I run Studio To Be, which works with local newsrooms all over the country on strategy and sustainability. So Seattle's been a very, very close partner for many years, and helped to kind of create the model that this is partially inspired and built upon. So about 10 years ago, the Seattle Times started to conceptualize what became the Education Lab, but essentially a philanthropically funded reporting initiative inside the newsroom that was able to go deep on issues around equity and education, and to do that in a way that was supported directly by a foundation. In that case, it was the Gates Foundation. And it's had, 8-9 years of success reporting on those issues. So from there, we've seen that model emerge all over the country of this hybrid capacity building and really, really high impact coverage on certain key topics. There's also been a blossoming of nonprofit investigative newsrooms. Wisconsin Watch is a great example of that. There are dozens around the country. So we're in a bit of a renaissance in terms of folks getting into the fray and figuring out how to get more foundation donor support to help stand up local journalism or accountability reporting. There's also been great work in public radio to really expand their news operations. So you know this, Rob, like the scaling of public radio newsrooms around the country has netted almost 1,000 additional journalism jobs in the last 10 or so years. So while the market has completely collapsed, and we have to anticipate that there's no holding the line if some significant things don't change, what we can feel inspired by is that there's no loss of interest in people doing this work. And as a Main Street jobs issue, a lot of jobs can be outsourced. A lot of businesses can go away. But it's hard to imagine local journalism happening without local journalists working in local communities. It's like trying to send your kid to school and there's no teacher there. It's like trying to, go to the doctor and again, you can't get to one. And some communities have those problems also, frankly. But the function and the service that journalism provides when done well is pretty essential to just the day-to-day functioning of our society. It's also something that I feel is really important in validating the lived experience of local communities. So we've got plenty of national news at the moment, you'll notice. The two places we may not need any additional reporters is Washington, D.C. and New York. But the rest of America, all the complexity, all the places, all the communities with 100,000 people, 200,000 people, 25,000 people, we're all at extreme risk of losing the basic fabric, the basic net that has been here for the history of this country. And I think we can be proud of that history. Again, for communities of color, there's been a Black press for hundreds of years in America. If you're in the Southwest, there's been a Spanish language press for hundreds of years in America. So it was the one thing that was a local business that had this high function, but was very tactile, and managed to do a job that otherwise, there's not many functions described in the Constitution. Journalism's one of them. It's in the First Amendment itself. So I don't want to engage in driving up people's anxieties, because there's already enough evidence that we should be very worried. I think part of what Microsoft has done successfully is step in with some humility. I tried to learn in the first, lap of this initiative to really go into communities through partnership, which is why community foundations are so essential. And that's something that folks like the Knight Foundation have been arguing for. It's like, let's activate community foundations. If you care about childhood poverty, if you care about workforce development, if you care about education, there's no way you cannot care about journalism, because that's how we learn about these issues. That's how we put a critical lens on what our challenges are and also where the solutions are. So I think this particular example in Wisconsin, in the part of Wisconsin that we're seeing you all come together, it's going to teach us things, frankly. And our job, and I'm in support of what Eric's doing at Microsoft, is to elevate those learnings, and let's network those learnings. So one quick anecdote, and then I'll be quiet because I'll have to roll off. But University of Wisconsin-Green Bay learned about a project that the Yakima Herald has been running on missing and murdered Indigenous women and people called The Vanished. And it's a great series, ongoing series, that is an example of the kind of coverage that only a local paper can really deliver, a local newsroom. And they were interested in adopting some work on it, taking on a summer clinic for reporting students, something. They wanted to know how they could engage. So we got the dean at UW Green Bay, we got the editor and the team at the Yakima Herald onto a call, and an hour later, there's like 5 ideas that they can follow up on. That's how collaboration happens. That's not dependent on funding. That's dependent on energy and commitment. And we've seen great examples of that in this initiative in Wisconsin.
Well, thanks for being here. And I know you do have to run, but we appreciate your perspective.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I want to turn to the community foundations, because you do play an important role in this project. Kurt Dachin, can you tell us why your foundation got involved in the new News Lab?
Well, to get started, none of this would be happening if it wasn't for the leadership and the commitment from Microsoft. They're the inspiration and the initial funders for this. Community foundations are naturally in the business of doing things that can improve our local communities. And donors trust us and have a relationship with us. Our local nonprofit communities trust us and relate with us. But in order to change and get people mobilized, that's always been the role of local journalism. And to have journalism that has credibility and has reach and can be a true partner in educating and informing a community on issues that are important helps to mobilize the philanthropic support that can help to make a community better. And that's the essence of where a community foundation fits in. Amber represents my colleague foundation in the greater Green Bay area. I'm located in Appleton in the Fox Valley region. We share a media market, but we're somewhat distinct regional communities, but we have a history of collaborating together on things all the time. We're good friends, and bringing the journalism community together in this collaboration together with higher ed, we really feel like this has power to educate and inform and help to change our communities for the better so that everyone prospers.
Great. Amber Pollock, you're someone who happens to have a background in journalism, and as well as now with Community Foundation. How do you see this project fitting in with your mission and with the work that the Community Foundation does in Green Bay?
Yes, thank you. I was previously with the Green Bay Press Gazette and in newspapers for the first half of my career, so certainly very near and dear to my heart for a lot of reasons. But in the role that I'm in now with the Community Foundation, really collaborative efforts like this are amplifying the needs of the community. So the work that news organizations are doing really raises up the challenges that a community is facing. It helps to amplify underrepresented voices. It digs into the issues, and it informs us all. So by articulating what the challenges are that a community is facing, by clearly and completely sharing those issues, the news organizations are helping the entire community look at what the solutions are and look at where the resources can best be placed to address those solutions. So, certainly from the work of our foundations, we need to best understand what's happening in the community and help the community understand those needs and those areas. And so to have this work taking place, it's really benefiting the entire community by allowing us to best determine where we can have the greatest impact with the resources and help us all come together around the solution.
It's also significant that Microsoft had a physical presence in Northeast Wisconsin. Eric, did Microsoft's presence in Green Bay have a part in making this possible?
Yes, absolutely. We wanted to try and do this pilot in as many places as possible, but we knew we needed to learn quite a bit before we could. So we decided to only choose 5 markets in total in year 1. And we went through quite a number of markets, 20 to 30 potential markets, and looked at a number of factors. And one of those factors was what was Microsoft already doing on the ground in that community? It was important that we didn't come in, cold and not have the type of relationships that would be critical to long-term success. And our TechSpark program is an important program in the greater Green Bay area and has proven a lot of value, not only to Microsoft, but to the community as well. And so that was a very important deciding factor. So we could come in and work with entities and individuals that we already had relationships with and really hit the ground running a lot faster than we would if we started somewhere new. We did that as well in some of the other locations, but in this location, it was great to see that paid dividends in terms of how fast we could organize, how fast we could get the funding and resources brought to bear on the problem, and how fast the newsrooms could collectively come together, collaborate, and start generating stories and reporting that is impactful in the communities. And if we have learned anything, we've learned that the community foundations were vital to that process, not only as a place where we could bring not only Microsoft's funding, but if we can attract other public and private funding, a place for that to live, but also to convene the right set of newsrooms, higher education, and other individuals for this first round. Now, obviously, there could be others and more that get brought in, but it was important to start with that mix. And the other thing that we've learned that has been incredibly fascinating to me is the willingness for all the newsrooms to partner together so quickly on shared reporting and shared topics that are of incredible resonance within the communities. Sometimes former competing newsrooms now working together to really, as you described, Rob, raise the bar for the entire ecosystem of news. We are not necessarily, as Microsoft, interested in 1 or 2 newsrooms. We're really interested in the whole ecosystem. And I credit the newsrooms for really embracing that and working together at a level that I haven't seen in my many, many years in the news business.
Well, let's bring in Andy Hall, who's the executive director of Wisconsin Watch, who is coordinating the 6 newsrooms participating in the project. So, Andy, as Eric said, we are used to competing. We newsrooms. Have you found challenges in getting these, herding cats and getting these bunch of journalists to work together?
Yes, Rob, absolutely. We started off with, some skepticism. Journalists are maybe naturally skeptical and want to be shown, and they want things to be proven. And that was true here in the early days. Certainly, some of us had doubts about whether this could get off the ground. Could we really trust each other working newsroom to newsroom when we continue to compete in some other ways? Journalistically and even financially. So we have had some, I guess it'd be fair to say, tough discussions to sort this out. But I'm, just to echo what Eric was saying, I'm very proud of what all the journalists involved have managed to do here, which is see that these critical issues facing our communities and the search for solutions to those problems and the threats to our democracy are so important and so urgent. We have to figure out some better ways of doing things. And that's what we've started to sort out here through the new News Lab, the Northeast Wisconsin News Lab, and its 6 competing and participating organizations, not competing, but rather collaborating. We had some issues to sort out, such as some of us knew each other well, but others didn't know each other at all. And yet we couldn't get together in person because of the pandemic. So we had to try to bond over Zoom, which is not recommended. Also, we all already have a lack of resources, all of us do. So how to squeeze this in and make use of the offer of some exciting new resources that are now available, but how to put those to work productively while continuing to also do the regular things that we do. So that means like some more meetings, weekly meetings for all the news partners, and then some monthly meetings involving the community foundations and Microsoft and representatives of the news partners. We've had to emphasize and stick to a policy of strict confidentiality within the news partners' discussions, and build that trust, like basically one conversation at a time. And then I think a critical piece that the public should be well aware of is this is an excellent example of total journalistic independence. The news organizations have 100% control over what they write about or report upon or broadcast or publish, 100% control over all that. In fact, when we submit the funding requests to the community foundations, all we submit is basically requested dollar amounts for each organization, because we hash all those other details out behind the scenes within the new News Lab. So that's a superb example, I think, of how to preserve the journalistic trust that's essential, so the public knows when the journalists are out there digging into issues, we're free to go wherever we and our colleagues think we should go to aid the community's understanding of issues and the search for solutions.
It's critically important, no doubt. And I've been doing this long enough to know that journalists do not like being told what they can write about, but it's important. It is important that people know that that it is set up that way. So there's no review of the editorial content. There's no minder from Microsoft or the community foundations, for that matter, that folks need to check in with. Actually, Eric, can I ask you? Is that on some level a risk for Microsoft? I mean, it's important for the journalistic organizations. Isn't there a chance that this could yield news that your company doesn't like? Oh, you did.
Absolutely. I'm going to do that every time. We echo what Andy said, that this model absolutely requires 100% authority by the newsrooms on the content. In fact, we don't have any conversations in regards to what they're going to cover. We are partnering with excellent news organizations and a variety of them with great voices in the community, and they will know how best to cover the community and what to report on. But it was an issue. That's something that we have to discuss as we see the traditional model behind news and journalism sort of crumble based on sort of disruption of technology and platforms that sort of take a lot of the revenue out of it. We have to become creative, and we have to look for other ways to replace that funding in order to execute the type of journalism that's required at a community level. And so there was lots of discussions around how do we do that? How do we ensure that the community and the audiences sort of trust what we're doing and what the newsrooms are doing? And the Community Foundation has played a vital role in that, allowing us to take some of the funding and to encourage other organizations to provide funding, not only in this market, but in other markets, that then goes out through the Community Foundation to the newsrooms based on what's best for the newsrooms. And so we as Microsoft and other funders are not directly funding and thus influencing individual newsrooms. That was vitally important to us. We think it's working well, but again, we're in experimentation mode and we learn along the way. And if there are things we need to do to shore that up and ensure that it continues, we'll absolutely do that. And there are other models that we need to pursue. We need to look at subscriptions, donations from the community themselves, other things that are going to replace the revenue that is lost from advertising. And so we're encouraged by the results today.
Great. All right. Well, thanks to all of you for joining us. In the second half of our program, we're going to hear from our news partners about what they are working on for the new News Lab. For this segment, we'll hear from our news partners in the new News Lab about their parts of this project. I am joined by Rob Chappell of Fox Valley 365, Jim Fitzhenry of USA Today Network, DJ Hall of Wisconsin Watch, and Ben Rogers of the Press Times. Rob Chappell, let's start with you. Tell us about the stories Fox Valley 365 is producing for the new News Lab.
Yeah, we spoke with a couple of sort of stakeholders in Green Bay that we have been familiar with for years, and just sort of tossed around some ideas of what are the issues that need to get covered. And the one that kind of came to the top is that Brown County made an effort to declare racism to be a public health crisis. Right? They stopped a little bit short of making that official declaration, but they did address the issues, and they've created an ad hoc committee on racial disparities. So we have two fantastic reporters that are covering the work of that committee, first of all, and so helping people get to know who's on that committee and what they're doing, what they hope to accomplish, while also digging into some of the issues that committee will be addressing. The fact that COVID really impacted Latino communities there. We're going to be asking what are the health disparities and what are the health issues in the United Nation. All the ways that race and racism and racial disparities affect public health.
Great. And what say a little bit more about what form that reporting will take. Are we looking at how will that be presented?
It's primarily just articles at this point because this the timing of this project is pretty tight, and this is only a couple of months. So we tossed about the idea of doing like a podcast or something. And in fact, one of our reporters is like an audio producer kind of guy. So that might be in the future, but for right now, it's just really well written and well resourced articles that will appear on foxvalley365.org, as well as one of them has already appeared in the Press Times, in fact, and they'll be available to the rest of the collaboration as well.
Great. Jim Fitzhenry is here. He's the Vice President of News for USA Today Network Wisconsin and oversees both the Appleton Post-Crescent and the Green Bay Press Gazette. Jim, I guess tell us about your projects, probably plural, huh?
Yeah. Well, we're just so happy to be part of this, Rob. We're working on a series looking at the lack of affordable housing in Northeast Wisconsin and the impact that's having on families across the region, as well as the economic impact that has on businesses, which are really looking to attract and retain qualified workers. So it's a really complex issue that has a lot of root causes, and the partnership and the support of the News Lab is allowing us to go in depth and look at the various parts of the story, as well as start to explore some of the solutions to solving the problem down the line.
Yeah, it's an issue that everyone is aware of, but the solutions piece is really a tricky one, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a problem that's become a little bit more acute more recently with businesses looking to attract and retain workers, because people who we want to attract and move into the region to take jobs need places to live. And it's not a problem where there's like one simple solution that would just solve it immediately. It's a problem that has some demographic trends, as we have a lot of baby boomers who are retiring and leaving the workforce. We have implications from the Great Recession, where a lot of people who are in the housing industry got out of building single-family homes. There's also been a lot of construction in the higher end of the market. So as we continue to do our reporting and have people explore this, it'll be interesting to see, how do you start to build your way out of a situation where studies have shown we need thousands of more affordable housing units just to keep up with demand.
And I know that USA Today Network Wisconsin has had pieces in this project that have published so far. Can you say a bit about the form that that these will take? Are we looking at newspaper stories? I believe there were some graphical elements. What else is in store?
Yeah, the really nice thing about being able to dive into an issue like this is it gives us time to do some extended videos where we feature people who are kind of living this issue and talking about their life and their experiences. We profiled one lady in a video who herself was homeless and now is counseling and helping people get out of homelessness and find places to live and getting back on her feet. We've been able to do some graphic embeds where you can kind of look on a map and actually see the depth of the problem and see the number of households who are struggling to make ends meet and how that fits into part of their life of being able to afford necessities. We've done traditional print and text and things like that, but it's really being able to tell the story in a lot of different levels. And we even had a chance to have some of our journalists be on WPR to talk about the series and to be able to bring it to WPR's wide audience.
Terrific. Well, let's turn to DJ Hall, managing editor of Wisconsin Watch. Wisconsin Watch and my outlet, WPR, are teaming up for a project that is launching soon. So, Dee, I'd like to ask you to tell us about that project and also why was I not invited to be part of it? I wasn't asked. I don't understand.
Sorry about that, Rob.
Maybe next time.
Yeah, maybe next time. So we are looking at a particular practice in Outagamie County Circuit Court among a couple of judges that involves it's kind of an open-ended supervisory situation, kind of probation that can last much longer than the typical probationary sentence that a person might receive. And we had received some tips about this from members of the justice community up there. So we've looked at what is the statutory, what requirements around these deals. It turns out there's a lot of vagueness about how far a judge's authority extends, and there are conflicting opinions about whether this particular kind of probation, furlough, sentence stay, whether these types of actions are a good thing that lead to better justice, or whether they simply prolong a person's, scrutiny under the judge in a way that some people find objectionable. So that's what we're looking at. We also did a statewide court analysis of cases to discover that there are one or two judges in Outagamie County who are among the biggest practitioners of this particular type of arrangement, supervisory arrangement.
Very interesting. Well, it sounds like worth a look.
And I will say that as part of the collaboration, then WPR will also be doing a companion audio piece and running that. We believe in early July. Everything's a little vague because we have a lot of information to deal with, and there's a lot of bulletproofing that we do with the investigative stories, and they're ready when they're ready. And so we're hoping to roll it out soon.
And a normal part of Wisconsin Watch's work is to distribute its investigations to outlets around the state for use, and we've collaborated with WPR and Wisconsin Watch have collaborated many times. It may be that this is comes a little bit more naturally to you. Do you think that's the case, the collaboration element of this project?
Yeah, it really does, because we have done, I can't even name the number of collaborations we did in 2020, for example. Part of it was everyone was looking at Wisconsin because of the election, and everyone was looking at Wisconsin because some of the racial justice protests, particularly Kenosha. And so we had offers from national news outlets left and right to collaborate with them. And also we collaborated a lot with local news outlets. And we have an ongoing collaboration with WPR in that we house an investigative fellow who is paid by WPR, but sits in our newsroom and provides both audio and online/print stories that we distribute across the state. So we have a longstanding collaboration with WPR, and we have episodic collaborations with different news organizations when our news priorities overlap.
Great. Ben Rogers is editor of the Press Times, a weekly newspaper serving the Green Bay area. Ben, tell us about your project.
Yeah, Rob, here's a mind-boggling stat that kind of highlights the importance of our four-part series. So since 2016, more than 7 out of 10 of Wisconsin's 421 school districts have proposed some sort of referendum, and 2/3 of those have passed. Now, locally, Brown County is no stranger to this. Since 2015, voters in each school district approved a combined $225 million, extending out as far as 10 years, and an additional combined $264 million in debt. So we here cover education with a fervor, and have looked at almost all of these referendum efforts one at a time, but we haven't really had the capacity to do something that looks at everything at once. So this series here is something that I would literally dream about producing, and thanks to Microsoft and the community foundations, that dream has become a reality. I really can't extend my thanks enough for helping us bring this important issue in front of readers. The level of depth to explain all of this so the average person can follow it, it's really massive. So we broke it down into 4 parts. The first part explains how public schools are funded, and that's kind of like a layer cake, except each and every layer is a different size and is made with different ingredients. The second part looks at the largest districts in the state of Wisconsin, Green Bay, Madison, and Racine, which last year passed a referendum for $1 billion over 30 years, and it passed by 5 votes. So the third part is something that we look at locally around here. Howard Swamico, for example, has gone to voters with 9 referendum questions since 2005. That's an obscene amount. And the final part breaks down how this school funding and everything has become a partisan issue, and really looks at different solutions that could come across. One thing here that really caught my eye too is that the state imposed revenue caps each district has, and they're all different, hasn't really increased that much over the past decade, only about 6%, but while inflation at the same time has gone up 17%. So I have my feelings on what needs to change. Hopefully readers can draw their own conclusion at the end of this, because this is something that's affecting more and more people each election cycle, and it doesn't appear to slow down unless some things change.
It's so interesting. It's a classic example of a story that the referendum in your local school district is intensely important to you. You need local information about that, but it becomes hard to take that step back and put the larger context to it. But that tells a story as well. Was this something that you sort of had in your back pocket that you would think about and wanted to pursue before this project?
Yeah, I'm a self-admitted local public education funding geek. So when we're talking school finance at school board meetings or referendums or planning or anything like that, my ears kind of perk up. And I find it fascinating how these tax dollars are being used and broken down and the complexity of it all. And like you said, when you just have, Green Bay is 5-6 school districts in the greater Green Bay area, and they all have these different unique challenges. So being able to look at each of them individually, but as part of a greater whole, that's something I was really excited to do and something I really wanted to do for a while now.
Right on. Well, so we talked about collaboration as part of this project, and I spoke with Dee about that specifically. But let's hear, Rob, from your point of view, it's totally normal. Different outlets have sort of rivalries and try to get scoops or whatever. Is it an adjustment for you to work in collaboration with these other outlets, and how has that been going so far?
I think it's been great. Of course, it's an adjustment. I'll give you an example. This is not really related to the competition, but just the idea of having more resources than what we're a small nonprofit newsroom, right? We've got a tiny little team. So first of all, I'll echo what Ben said about the thanks to Microsoft and to the community foundations, because there's just the constant, just keeping up with the day-to-day news in Madison. We have a Madison 365 as well as Fox Valley 365. So just to keep up with that is a challenge. So there's no way I could ever commit 2 reporters full-time to take on a big issue like this without this funding, but also without the partners. And the example I'll give you is I had a reporter who's going to go cover the second meeting of this ad hoc committee that I mentioned. And I was telling her, but I don't have a photographer in Green Bay, right? I have a freelancer that I use in Madison sometimes. So I was telling this reporter, just get what you can on your phone. And it just suddenly light bulb went off. Oh, wait a second. So I called Jim and I said, you have a shooter available that could scoot over to this meeting quick? And he was like, sure, yeah. And so what ended up happening is we published that story with, credit to the Green Bay Press Gazette photographer. And then Ben published that story in his paper. So he ended up with in print, a Fox Valley 365 story printed in the Green Bay Press Times with the Green Bay Press Gazette photo, which would never have happened ever before we kind of all got together and to try to tackle this whole thing. So it's been really terrific. And I will also say, I just today published Ben's story about the Racine referendum and the passing by 5 votes. So that's content that we can bring to a different audience that don't pick up the Green Bay Press Times. So to amplify that great work that his reporter Heather Graves did on that story, to give that some new, different eyeballs, to bring that important issue to a wider audience is really, really important, I think.
Great. Jim Fitzhenry, you manage reporters at a lot of different local news outlets. And so, maybe you're used to pulling together collaborations within your team. How, is it an adjustment to work those collaborations with competing outlets?
Yeah, I think Andy touched on that a little bit in the first part, is that I know Wisconsin Watch well, and Andy and Dee over the years have been really pioneers in, nonprofit investigative work. They've, trained hundreds of journalists with their collaboration with UW-Madison. I really didn't know Rob or Ben before this, and so getting to know them has been fun. You just really get a sense of the passion that people have for local journalism, the professionalism that they have, and that people understand that because of the challenges that we face, that we need to do things differently, that there's strength when we work together and bring these issues to light to our communities. So, of course, you have people that you compete with, you like to get scoops, but I think people have seen the bigger picture here of what's at stake. And it's really been quite enjoyable, although doing another Zoom meeting is not something anybody looks forward to. It is great to hear the ideas. It is great to get the feedback and get a chance to do this. And, I think Microsoft has set a great tone with wanting to support, wanting to have the ecosystem get strengthened, but really maintaining that wall of separation between the news product and what we're doing as journalism, as journalists, but also providing the support, which has led to some really impressive work early on that we've seen and been able to share with our readers.
Great. I'd like to ask each of you, what is success for this project? Like, what do you hope? This is a multi-year project. This is a large-scale endeavor here. What do you hope will come out of it? Dee, let's start with you.
Well, I think we're already seeing the fruits of this. We are seeing in-depth stories focused on the needs and interests of people in northeastern Wisconsin that would not have been told if not for this funding and this collaboration. I think that's the fruit right there. We're already seeing it. The other successful part of this is that we, as several people mentioned, we now get access to each other's high quality content, and we are able to bring it to new audiences. We do that somewhat anyway, distributing occasionally stories by ProPublica, for example. But this gives us intensely local, deeply reported information about Wisconsin that I think readers of all of our news outlets enjoy and benefit from. So to me, we've already had quite a bit of success just in generating this high quality content that everybody in Wisconsin can read, and especially people in northeastern Wisconsin.
Great. Ben Rogers, what are your fondest hopes?
Awards are great. Everybody loves awards, but I'm telling you, I think everybody on this call would agree that the reason that they get into journalism is hopefully one day affecting change. Putting some pieces out that start some real conversations with the people who make these decisions. I think that's the highest award you can get, is to point to something and say, if it wasn't for this piece here, this conversation wouldn't have happened here, and this wouldn't have changed over here. And I think that having the capacity that we have now to take a deep look at some of these issues for all of our newsrooms definitely has the potential to possibly achieve that.
Awesome. Jim Fitzhenry, what's success?
I think success is just continuing the work that we've done and to make this a long-term endeavor that goes on beyond the initial stages here. Microsoft is committed to helping get this launched, to help forge partnerships with foundations, is that, we make it work for the long stretch so we can better serve our communities. And, it's not something that's going to happen overnight, but already the conversations that we've had and the things we've learned make me really optimistic that this is going to be something that will last for a long time. And the opportunity to work with UW Green Bay and students and to be able to help train and work with the next generation of journalists is really exciting.
Great. And Rob Chappell, what do you see as, what are your hopes and dreams?
A couple of things. First of all, just related to this, the narrow scope of the stories that we are working on. I think there's a lot of people who are still in denial about systemic racism and as it relates to health. So I think success for us is to just kind of to educate folks on that issue, that race and ethnicity and racism do play a part in public health, and maybe to make some people a bit uncomfortable about that, about the truth of that. But also more broadly, I think just lifting up voices that have been marginalized in the Fox Valley. I mean, the Green Bay, Fox Valley have a growing and a very rapidly diversifying population. So to bring some of those voices into the lift them into the mainstream a little bit would be success for us. Not to mention getting some more reporters of color on the ground reporting from their particular perspective. I think will add something to the whole media landscape. And then finally, I think if this kind of alludes to what Jim said, that if we're still friends 5 years from now and still working on projects together and still sharing resources and still bouncing ideas around, I think that's massive success. It's widely known in academia that a good, solid community press leads to greater civic engagement among citizens. So we talk about more people voting, more people going to the city council meetings, more people reaching out and engaging with their elected officials. So I think if we can, as a sort of rising tide lifting all the boats of all the media outlets around the Fox Valley, I think you will inevitably see greater civic engagement. And I think that's sort of the big, high-minded, we're saving democracy here kind of thing. But I think it's real. I think that can really happen. Thanks a lot to this partnership.
I love it. I mean, I asked about hopes and dreams, so this is, what better answer? I'm just in it for the awards personally. I don't, whatever. No, just kidding. Well, thank you everyone for being with us. Thanks for joining, and thanks for being willing to share your work in the new News Lab. And I think it's going to be pretty cool to see it develop. Thanks, everyone.